Welcome to Spiritual Sauce, the podcast where we talk to spirit and invite you to join the conversation. We are your
Yes.
hosts
Valerie Medina.
and Christine Boschen. This is a reaction video to a session in which Christine channels and Valerie asks questions. You can find the original recording and associated reaction videos in the playlist Christine's First Channeling Session. This episode is a big topic. We asked our guides to talk to us about karma.
And it's not what you think.
And it's not what you think. Or maybe it is. We are interested in your thoughts.
So, can you provide some insights into the concept of karma?
Ah, da, 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 da. I feel good.
I'm-
Do, 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 do. I knew that I would now. Do, do, do. So listen, it's all good. So karma is another one of those weighty, heavy, oh no, I did this, now it's going to happen to me and I can't ever escape it's
right.
karma has become very overlaid. And Christine had some struggle today as she was deciding whether or not to bring the rosary with her because she feels the weight of Christianity. And so
Many people do, yes.
yes, and it's not just Christianity, it's other religions too. Not all of them, not all of the major religions, but several of them, enough of them that encompass the predominant thought forms in your particular culture and place and those who would probably be listening to you in the English language. There's a very heavy layer of the concept of guilt, sin, and consequence. And karma is caught in the undertow and undercurrent of these concepts of guilt, sin, and consequence. We'd rather you to think about it as seeing two sides of the same coin. Two sides of the same coin.
The way we learn as human beings is through dichotomy. And the guides explain this exactly, having, two sides of the same coin. That's how we learn. And that's simply what karma is. It's just experiencing from the other person's point of view. And again, that connects us. That's the human experience, but that also connects us. It makes us see that we are, um, the person in front of us is our mirror, you know? Um,
And I think they're also saying like you can't have one without the other. So if you've had the experience of somebody, I'm just going to use a random example, someone stealing your car, let's say, that you would also steal someone's car.
right.
And if not that exact literal thing, another experience that would bring about the same sensations of emotion.
Uh-huh.
So you
Yes.
might be the one who's like, I'm so excited. I just stole a car. Wow, look at my new car, right? And you'd also be the one
Right.
saying, oh my goodness, that very expensive thing that I need to get to my job, I no longer have. Someone took it from me. I feel violated. So there's like those two experiences. You can't have one without the other, and you'll
Right.
flip like when you're doing heads or tails, right? Like you flip a coin
Yeah.
and it lands heads or tails, that you're going to have the experience of being the head and the tail.
But it might not even be that literal.
It might not.
Um,
Yeah.
you could have, say I'm a middle class person living in the suburbs and my Prius is stolen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a manager in a bank and I occasionally write a check to myself.
Mm,
So you see,
right.
maybe it's not that exact literal exchange opposite, but it's some kind of cheat or robbery in another way, another little thing that you're doing in your life. Or maybe you are at work so much, you are robbing from your children the time that you have
Mm.
that you should give to them.
So
Some
there's a trade. There's
it,
an equal
it,
balance of experience there, whether it's the
yeah,
same exact storyline or something else that gives a similar experience or sensation,
yeah,
and being on both sides of that. And I think I'd also just like to mention that we tend to describe karma in negative terms, but karma could also be there's someone in your life that's very generous to you, very loving, very supportive, and then you are also generous, loving, and supportive. Maybe not to that same person, but you are
Right.
also
But to
that.
someone else, you pay it
Just
forward.
so there's like there's an experience of an interaction. It's all about interaction, right? It's all about human interaction or how we touch each other or impact each other. So it's saying you will experience being the person that does that and the person that receives that, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that you will have both of those experiences.
And so if you were to pick up a penny, or let's say a dime or a quarter, but we're going to ask you to pick up the coin which you are familiar with, but which you forget the most. You don't remember what one side looks like and the other. And we would like you to imagine, is this a coin in your own American pocketbook? And we know that you all are onto Bitcoins and what the heck have you, and all these different kinds of
I don't know what
electronic
a
currency
Bitcoin
these days.
is.
But if you were to imagine a pocket full of coins and they are all two-sided, let your mind draw you to the one that is shining at you. It's like it's in your penny jar, and there's this one penny that has just a little bit more shine and buffer. It looks a little bit newer, or maybe it looks older. It's the one that has your curiosity sparked, and you're going to go and you're going to pick up that coin and you are going to study it, but you will study it one side at a time.
So what that says to me is as our souls are choosing life experiences, so like as we're coming into like in the space between lifetimes, as we're deciding on the sorts of experiences that we want to have, that we will choose a life scenario or set of scenarios based on what we want to study in more detail. And
Mhm.
it could be something that we have experienced before, but we haven't paid a lot of attention to the experience, so we haven't really absorbed all the lessons that it has to offer.
Right, right.
Or it could be
Or
one,
it was incomplete.
yeah, or it was incomplete. So there's something about that particular experience that is drawing our curiosity and it's lighting up for us. It's activated spiritually.
Right.
So not really talking about studying pieces of metal. They're talking about that as an analogy. Like that.
No, yes, studying the experiences that you're going to want to have.
So I think the usefulness of the coin here is just to help us think about experiences coming in pairs, coming
Yeah,
in
yeah,
opposites together.
yeah. I like that. I think I wrote a note to myself when I listened to this that I thought it was um, a balance.
Hmm.
So it's just constantly a balance, balancing things out,
It
and
is.
not in a payback kind of way, but in an experience kind of way.
Right. And I think they continue and talk to us a little bit about that balance.
Yeah,
And when you have studied that side and you really feel into the memory, the memorization of that, then you will flip it to the other side and you will experience that.
Okay. So they are talking about that balance, but they're also saying focus on your current experience. So being in the present with a current experience.
yeah, yeah. That is a note that I had wrote before about, it keeps coming back to when you are experiencing, you are in the now, you are being.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about the future or worried about the past. You are experiencing what you're supposed to experience now.
Yeah. So even so, like you were talking a while back about grief, like allowing grief to be, to really fully experience it. You could say grief is one side of that coin, and you're really being with it. You're really studying it. You're memorizing it. You're delving into it. You're feeling how it feels. You're really absorbing it.
And at the same time, each element of grief, as you move through it, say it's a particularly bad day, a sadness comes over you, and you cry because you're feeling that loss, that pain. And after you cry, woof, you feel relieved. because you just released
Mm-hmm.
that tension. So that's the even within that one side of the coin, there's another side of
Mm-hmm.
that little bitty experience.
It evolves.
Uh-huh.
It rotates.
And then you put it down and you forget about it. And you come back to it again. You say, do I remember that coin? And I'm not so sure. Maybe I remember that was Lincoln on that particular coin, or maybe it was Kennedy, or we don't actually know. And the shape of the nose on the head that is on the coin had a certain angle, or maybe it didn't, and maybe there was some lettering on it that we forgot, and there was a certain date on it and a mint, and these little details. And so you remember some of the details, but not all of them. So you study it again.
Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, right? Like we're not, we don't come down to the earth plane, a couple of times, most of us, right? We come down again and again and again, or even in one lifetime. Like, how many times have we experienced a single emotion? Like, how many times have I been frustrated? There's no way I could even begin to account my
Right,
moments of frustration. But apparently, that's a coin that I really need to study because I keep going back to it and back to it and back to it, right?
right,
Or
right.
so the other side of frustration maybe is relief, or like it's useful, I think, to try to find the opposite of the emotion so that you can anticipate the the two-sidedness. Like, what is the opposite? There's a book that I really love that changed my life actually called Marriage of Spirit, and
Mhm.
it's by Leslie Temple Thurston, and she in this book talks about this basically this very thing we're talking about, the marriage of opposites, and she gives specific techniques for how to bring them together and thereby find peace. So we were talking
Mm.
about the violet flame the last time in our last session
Mhm.
being a transmutation of energy, and from what I get from her book, which has been again life-changing experience for me to read, is that when you bring the two opposites together, if you can identify one opposite, there's power in figuring out what it is opposite from. So happy, sad, right? Good,
Right.
bad. Those are some very, black and white,
Basic, yeah.
right? But writing down, so she's got basically three different techniques. One of them is you write a list or two lists. The other one is you create a triangle and you ask higher power to integrate them into the
I can't
combined.
believe you're telling me this. I just heard this a couple of days ago, this explanation of the triangle.
And then,
And
really,
and that book quoted it,
someone else brought it up.
yes,
You're talking to.
I think it was Lee Harris, or maybe it was that psychic Nikki Hay, is it Nikki, I can't remember her last name, but she's out of the UK. And she referenced that book
Huh. Yeah.
too.
Everyone
So
should go read that book.
yeah, it's amazing though that sometimes little you get little synchronicities
Synchronicities.
and little nudges to tell you that you need to read a book or learn a concept.
And so the last technique that she teaches is squares. So we think, we think, oh, we don't want to experience anger. Anger's not a good emotion. So, but she says, if you figure out what the opposites are, maybe anger and happiness, and you say, you put a quadrant, I want to be angry because, and then you list out the reasons you want to be angry. I want to be happy because, and you list out, I'm avoiding being angry because I'm avoiding being happy because.
Oh,
And it helps you really dig into the experience of the opposites, which the guides are talking about, right? Of the exploring the coin and really delving
that's
into it.
interesting. Yeah,
Very,
yeah.
yeah, it's like I said, life-changing for me because it was so practical, because it gave me techniques, and I have found peace through using these techniques and through
Right.
considering the can't have one side of the coin without the other.
Yeah. I think it's a good way of when you're feeling stuck and you're feeling what we think of as negative emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and they're making us feel hurt, ugly,
Mm.
fearful, sad. Just that
Confused.
confused, just that exercise of going, okay, what's on the other side of this, helps you kind of awaken and
Yeah.
kind of go, oh, and I'll feel that in a couple of days too. I mean, because that's what we do.
We
Once you
cycle through.
understand that, that you're just cycling through the emotions of it, and you're gonna get to the other side in a couple of days.
But if you're really stuck, right? Like if it's not a couple days, if it's like several
Mm,
years and you're stuck in it, to use the technique that she teaches of the quadrant where it's like, well, what do I like about this? Like if you're like, I want to be successful, right? You
right.
think I want to be
How is it?
successful, but I'm not succeeding. I'm failing.
How is
What,
this serving me?
yeah, what do I like about failing? Well,
Right,
I
right,
don't have to prove anything to anybody, right?
right,
Like it's
right.
comfortable and I know it, or what am I afraid of with success? So,
Right.
and then what do I like about success? What do I not like about failure? So you get to explore all the nuances of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in
It's
that,
interesting.
it really is, and it's like if going back to the river, it feels
Mm,
to me like you might have lost your oars in the current, but then you pick them up again. So like you get overwhelmed by the emotions, but then, oh, wait a second, now I can swim through this again. I've got some more control by looking at the different sides of the coin. So to mix analogies.
yeah.
One side and then the other. And then maybe you spend a session where you're going one side, other, one side, other, one side, other, one side, other, and getting so frustrated, or maybe you're spinning on it and you get caught in it, and then you say, oh my gosh, I really need a break. I have to go out and take a walk. I need some sunshine on me. I need to look at the leaves and the trees. And remember that there's other things to focus on. And karma is that. Karma is an exploration of opposites. Karma is an exploration of the dance of togetherness. Karma is a way of being humans together, and of being humans and other non-human members of the earthbound family together. And so you try one side of an experience and then you try the other. And you are not always coming back to the same place in time. You are spiraling and you are learning and you are growing. And so there is a growth and an expansion and an evolution, which is not just the shape of one side or the other. And so it is all good. Na 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 na. Right? It's all good.
So you're saying there's no karma is just opposites. It's just different sides of the same coin. There's not it's not a judgment of good or bad,
Right.
just
And so,
experience.
right. And that is why we are bringing dear beloved James to remind you through Christine's very bumbling and apologetically terrible condition. Well, not terrible, but you know what we're trying to say. She's just being her real self and doing her best to bring through the energy that wants to come here and play with all of you. And yet you will remember, and maybe we'll go look up some old videos where you can listen to James and really appreciate his playfulness. And we want
Yes.
you to feel that playfulness, right? We want you to feel
Right.
that impish naughtiness of exploration and joy, because karma is really about that, even in its heaviest of points and moments. And so if you can say, hey, thank you, Christian dogma, for giving me centuries and centuries of this taste. It's really, we want you to think about these energies and ideas as being something that has a taste, something that has a color, something that has a shape, something that has a sound. And you can say there's the concept of guilt, and there's the concept of perfection or being without guilt, or and the angel and the devil and the God and the like, the heaven and the hell and all of that. And these have tastes and flavors. And when you can think about you're making a meal and you're going to eat some dinner, you may have something that has some bitterness on the table. You may have something that has some saltiness on the table. You may have something that has some sweetness on the table. You may have something that has some sourness on the table. You may have this other concept of umami, and now we are into a number of 5 flavors rather than 4. And so you don't judge yourself for tasting something.
I want to pause on that for a moment. I think that's really key. When it's they're they're using analogies to help us break out of our memorized judgment. We're so locked into a narrow way of looking at life that they're giving us these analogies that will help us ease out of that without just kind of like you get to sneak around the back door, because if you try to go through the front door, it would be locked. And here I am being, using an analogy again. But I can think about tasting, right? Like I'm not going to be mad at myself for putting a bitter food in my mouth. I'm not going to make myself wrong for that. I might not enjoy it, although there are other times when I might take that as medicine, like, oh, a lot of times bitter foods are actually medicinal. I'm I'm not going to judge myself for liking sweets. I might judge myself for eating too many of them, but I'm not going to judge myself for liking them, right? So I think that that's really useful here, is to not judge ourselves for choosing all of these different experiences, for exploring all of these different experiences.
You may assign a favorite taste. You may say, I would much rather eat something sweet than I would like to eat something bitter. Or that was too much salt or too little sugar, for example, but you wouldn't fault yourself for the tasting of it. And so we would suggest to you that you could consider not faulting yourself for the tasting of any of these other ideas, be it the idea of sin and redemption or the idea of karma.
Okay. When I was listening to this, what I was thinking of, oh, so all those tastes are simply choices that we've made. And when you put something in your mouth, you don't judge it. You decide, you experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the guides are saying. Experience it like you taste food. It simply is, and you don't beat yourself up for tasting a snack that didn't taste so good, and you take it out of your mouth, or maybe you go ahead and swallow it. Go ahead and chew it up and swallow it real quick just to get it out of your mouth.
Right, lots of water.
Yeah, glass of water. I just thought that was a very interesting way to describe hardships in life.
Or also, when they bring in James, right? Like he's one of those performers that push the boundaries of quote unquote acceptable public behavior,
Yes,
but in a
yes,
way that created such an allowance for actual joy, right? Like
right.
you,
But also hyper masculine behavior too.
interesting. Yeah.
He did he did dance in a way that wasn't necessarily acceptable. He danced in a sexual way. He danced flamboyantly. He had people treat him. He had little acts where he treated where people his the guys would come out and put a fur coat on him, and
Right.
he'd do
Like a king, like
like a
a,
king. They would
yeah,
crown him, yeah,
yeah,
and then he'd throw it off, and then he'd dance some more. I
yeah.
mean, it was it was an exuberant uh act that no one else did until Prince, and Prince was just
And
emulating him.
and maybe and Freddie Mercury, no, I think you're right. James Brown really
Well,
pioneered that.
and Prince actually learned his moves and emulated his
From
moves.
James Brown. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how he hurt himself, or he hurt his hips and knees and stuff.
Oh,
Because
right.
he did,
Yeah, because you see
because
him James going down and doing like just all of a sudden just
splits,
doing the
just
splits, just
yeah, yeah.
boom,
And
down, back up.
Prince
And
did it with heels on.
well, they both did, right? They were both not the tallest of guys, right? Like they both
Right.
wore heeled,
Prince had big heels.
bigger
Had
heels.
yeah, bigger heels.
And so that's so important though on so many levels to allow because we were asking about life purpose, right? Like that's one of the main themes moving through this set of questions that you had.
Right,
And they're
right.
saying sexuality is an important part of it. That's part of what they're saying. They're saying
Yes.
being true to yourself, including the parts of you that are loud and outrageous, is a part of that. And so we have so many rules, spoken and unspoken, that we walk around living inside of. And it's like we're contained in these little spaces. And to truly be true to our life purpose is to allow ourselves to erupt inappropriately at times, right?
Hmm,
So,
hmm.
and but I'm sure that James Brown and Prince, well, besides being phenomenally talented, and so there's a little bit more that they could push that envelope more than the average Joe, right?
Right, right.
But they pushed that envelope and then allowed all of us to experience vicariously. So it gets back into like the other question you were asking, how do you contribute? That was a question how, that you asked, how do you contribute? And you
Hmm,
go back to James contributing by being in his own joy.
hmm.
And and you said hyper masculine, so he's like showing one side of the coin, right? You could have hyper feminine, hyper masculine. So he's
Hmm,
really embodying that and giving us all permission to experience that range there. And I think Prince is very much that way too. And
hmm.
interesting how in his evolution as a performer and as a human being, the androgyny became rather pronounced with Prince, right? So kind of
Yeah,
already within one human being, bringing those two sides of the coin
yeah.
together.
Sexiest man with eyeliner. Yeah.
I love.
Thank you for joining us. We're glad you're here, and we hope you stick around.
Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and react. React. Suggest other topics and join the conversation.
Yeah.